contribute a little about what I know, because I come from Adamawa, and I want to say that the occupation of some local governments in Adamawa State in the last few days happened in less than 10 days. It took Boko Haram less than 10 days to move in to Madagali, Gulak, Michika, and now they are Baza, just very close to Mubi. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I want to say that there is a problem. The problem has to do with lack of understanding of how Boko Haram is even operating by our security forces. Mr. President, like other speakers said, I interacted with a few people who migrated from those areas into Yola. And what we hear is the number of people operating in those areas are not more than 100. But yet they are able to push the military away and take over most of the towns and villages around that area. And it may interest you to know that the second largest city in Adamawa, that is Mubi. Mubi, virtually everybody moved out of Mubi, including the emir, and they have all relocated back to Yola. As I'm talking to you now, there is virtually no public school or place in Yola that is not occupied by those who left those local governments into Yola. And you can see it on the pages of newspapers yesterday and probably even today, how small young boys, girls, women, elderly are queuing up in camp centers to even look for food to eat. Mr. President, apart from that, in the areas of Madagali and Michika local government, some of the people that ran away, they went into the hills, into the bush. They were really harvesting unripe corns and some of the agricultural items to feed themselves. A lot of them, when Boko Haram learned about their presence in those areas, they went around and killed most of them. Nobody can tell you how many people have been killed in Madagali and Michika local government areas. Only God knows. But Mr. President, whatever prayer we may have in this chamber, let it be that something that will answer one question. I once asked the service chiefs this question. Why is it that the challenges facing our security agencies in Nigeria are different from those of our neighbors? Why is it that Cameroon were able to contain this carnage and any other neighboring country, they were able to contain this problem? In our own case, Mr. President, in Mubi in particular, when the insurgents took over Gulak, Michika, the backup force that was residing in Mubi, they were the first people that started running out of Mubi back to Yola. And that was what was responsible for the movement of people en masse out of the whole of those 5 local governments. When they saw the military themselves are running away, it was when everybody now decided to just run away. Some have left to their neighboring relations in Cameroon, and some came back to Yola. So, Mr. President, as I'm talking to you now, there is one big problem that we have on the ground. I don't know, that prayer too should include that. That is, there is lack of coordination between the central government, the state government and those local governments in those areas. There's hardly any coordination between these tiers of government to really channel support, either through NEMA or SEMA or whatever. You find that all the support that is getting there now is coming from individual politicians. They just buy a few mattresses, few buckets, few mats, and take it to them. You wonder if there is any government at all. So, Mr. President, whatever we are going to do, we must ensure that those agencies that are supposed to give support to these people, those displaced, they are doing their work. That is second. And lastly, Mr. President, I think whether election will hold or not, I don't know. But in Adama, for instance, we have a by-election that is already scheduled for 11th of October. And up to this moment, there is nothing that is saying that that election will not hold. And as far as I know, in those 5 local governments, except if they are able to push out those insurgents, I don't think anybody can go there. Because most of the political parties that had their primaries had it in the state capital. The APC they used to have, they had their own in local government headquarters, but in those 5 local governments, they did not had it there, they brought it to the capital. So it will be difficult for anybody to go to those areas to really prosecute any election. So the earlier they tackle this problem, the better for all of us. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, I am Nenadi Usman and I represent Kaduna South. Mr. President, while joining my colleagues to thank the leader for this very, very timely motion, I just thought I should contribute by way of saying that the security challenges in the Northeast are topical, and this is the right moment to talk about them, but also there are residual activities which I don't know if they are a fallout of what is happening in the Northeast, but from my end, from Kaduna South, for example, we feel them. So I just want to think that while taking the case of the Northeast, maybe we should look at it holistically. Because just as Aline Dume said, if something goes wrong in one part of the country, and you think, no, it has not yet reached my end, for all you know, it could spread and get to where you are. Mr. President, sir, there was a day I had cause on this, in this hallowed chamber to make a presentation on the number of deaths that had occurred in my senatorial district. Today, I want to say that it has not abated at all. If anything, 2 or 3 months ago, the Atakar and Marwa chiefdoms of Kaura local government area of my senatorial district had attacks. That particular area shares boundaries with Plateau State. Villages were attacked, ransacked, houses were burned, whole families were wiped out completely, some with only one person left, others with nobody left alive, and at the end of the day, internally displaced persons emerged out of what was left. It didn't stop there. During the summer holiday, while the Senate was on holiday, Fad and Karshi town, some other villages of Numana chiefdom, of Sanga local government area of the southern Kaduna zone, witnessed the same attacks, where houses were completely burnt, families were killed, some families were completely annihilated. And as a result, we have over 300 internally displaced persons, some of them living in primary schools in Nasarawa State, because that particular local government area shares boundaries with Nasarawa State. And when I asked, how come a group of 10, just like my colleague, Senator Aline Dume said, it was a group, I was told it was a group of between 8 and 10 people who came with AK-47s and were able to raise down the whole town. So one wonders, where are we getting it wrong? We need to find out so that we can make it right. Because if it continues, people are now living in primary schools. Domestic and wild animals have eaten what had been planted on farmlands. That just goes so that when harvest comes, there will be nothing to be harvested, and the people are going to, apart from suffering from insecurity, there will be the issue of hunger as well. Mr. President, sir, these things we are talking about, when it doesn't happen to you, if it has not come to your doorstep, it will just sound like statistics. But for me, I have seen what has happened. I have seen what happened in these villages. I have seen the number of houses that were razed down. I've seen and talked to people who have lost. In a family of 11, only one person survived. It is really heart-rending. So I want to suggest, sir, that while we look at the issue of the Northeast, let us also look at the activities that are going on in these other areas, because we are told they are residual activities, activities of people who migrate from the Northeast, part of the Boko Haram sect, who are coming, trickling down to where we are. We don't know. But whatever it is, I think it is better that we take this security issue holistically and not just look at the Northeast separately, and then maybe at some other point we start looking at other areas. I think, sir, you should look at it holistically. That way we'll be able to resolve it. If, for example, I'm not hoping so, but the rate at which the killings are going on is not just the Northeast that may not be able to hold elections. The Deputy Senate President said that a country at war, he read the relevant parts, if the country is at war, there cannot be elections. So I believe that if we look at these issues holistically, it is going to be more rewarding. It is going to help us in tackling the whole thing instead of looking at it separately. Mr. President, I want to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and to hope that when it's time for the prayers, if we're going to amend the prayers, I hope I'll be given an opportunity to amend the prayers to include the other parts that are suffering as well. Thank you, sir.
That the nation is at war. That is the issue. So it is not about whether it is Boko Haram or not Boko Haram. There is no difference between the situation in the Northeast now and if any other country had declared war on Nigeria. So this is not, I don't think we have to mince words at all about what we want to do. I think my suggestion here is, how do we prosecute this war? Because there is a real war for us, whether it's on one side, one section of the country, or it's covering the whole country. So once a nation is at war, the entire nation would have to mobilize all the war resources and war efforts, all. Whether it's refugee, whether it's supply line, whether it is medical or anything at all. So indeed, there is no doubt in my mind that what Boko Haram is doing now is they've declared war on Nigeria. And it's true we didn't recall the Senate. Aline Dume, you are right. But also I'm sure you are aware that I directed that the Senate Committee on Defense must come and meet with the service chiefs whilst we are on recess so that they can get a proper briefing. We have a dilemma on our hands here because there is a limit to what we can say in plenary here and what we can discuss in a closed door session. So we have to be a bit careful. And that's why in my address I said that this is the time for us to support our armed forces, to encourage them so that they can prosecute this war. At this stage, all of us are involved, whether you are in uniform or out of uniform. And we have to find a solution to it. Back the military, mobilize as much as we can, bring all our war resources and war efforts together so that we can prosecute this war. There's no way in which we are going to just say that this is exclusively for one section of this country. No. And I don't think that that is the thinking in any quarter at all.
After long debate during the plenary, the Senate, in its wisdom, however, considered and approved the report of the Joint Committees on Finances, Loan and Foreign Debts on the request of President Jonathan for external borrowing of not more than $1 billion to tackle the insecurity challenges in the country.
Those in favor of the motion that the Senate do consider the request of Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief, for approval of the external borrowing of not more than $1 billion to tackle the ongoing security challenges in Nigeria, say aye. Against, say nay. The ayes have it.
That's Parliament Viewpoint on AIT Parliamentary Channel on the DASA platform. Join us again next week for another episode of the program. I am Ogiemoyi Ihimekmen. Thanks for staying with us.